Hi, my name is Robert Constanza. I'm the chair in public policy at the Crawford School of Public Policy here at Australian National University. I'm also a fellow in the Asia and Pacific Policy Society that's also located here at the Crawford School. My research focuses around integrating the study of humans and the rest of nature toward the goal of creating a more sustainable and desirable future society. So integrating sustainability with desirability, I think, is a key part of it. What do we mean by quality of life? How do we envision a more sustainable society? But also, how do we better understand the underlying dynamics of the way our ecological life support system functions and how it's linked to human well-being? So a big focus of my work has been on this topic of ecosystem services and natural capital. So the benefits that people derive from functioning ecosystems, to get beyond the conception of nature as a luxury good, as something we can either have or not, depending on whether we can afford it, to a more realistic view of our natural assets as something that we fundamentally depend on for our survival and certainly for our sustainability. But making those connections in a more quantitative way and understanding the dynamics, the complex dynamics and relationships between the way ecosystems function and the way people benefit from those functions, I think is a key part of it. One quick example is a study that we did recently on the value of coastal wetlands for storm protection. And in order to do that, we had to assemble data on the tracks of historical storms, the amount of wetlands in the swath of each of those storms, the amount of infrastructure in the swaths, the sort of size of the storms, and the amount of damage that they did. And then we could build a statistical model that then related the degree of damage from the storms to the amount of wetlands that were protecting that infrastructure, and got a significant relationship that we could then use to estimate the avoided damage. So how much would an additional hectare of wetlands, for example, provide in terms of reducing the damages from potential storms. This is an important research that has fairly direct policy implications. The Corps of Engineers, for example, in Louisiana was considering whether to build artificial levees to protect the city and other infrastructure from storms, or to restore the coastal wetlands in order to perform the same function, but also to perform a whole range of other functions that wetlands can provide that artificial levees can't. Because coastal wetlands provide a range of ecosystem services, including support of fisheries, recreational values, carbon sequestration. There are over 17 different ecosystem services that we've managed to identify and quantify. Several years ago, we did a global estimate, a meta-analysis of all of the studies like the one that I just mentioned over this whole range of ecosystem services. And for all of 11 different biomes around the world, came up with values in total that were much larger than global GDP at the time. So one of the fundamental conclusions from this is that if we're really serious about building a sustainable and desirable future, we have to incorporate the value of our natural capital assets and the ecosystem services they provide. They're probably providing much more benefits than even the total of all of our conventional economic benefits. Another aspect then of the research has to do with how do you integrate that service, that benefit from nature, with the other components that contribute to human well-being. And what do we mean by human well-being? It's clear that we need at least 4 major types of assets to provide any sort of benefits, including conventional economic production, but also direct benefits. And that's our natural capital assets, our built capital assets, our conventional things we think of as capital, human capital, all individual people and their education and their health, but also social capital, all of the interactions among people, all of their institutions and networks and family and friends, etc. And it's becoming clearer that all 4 of those types of capital are absolutely essential in providing any kind of benefits. But what we need to understand better is, how does that interaction work? What's the proper balance among those 4 types of assets? What do we really mean by well-being? I'm involved in a project with the country of Bhutan, for example, that's based on developing a new economic paradigm, an ecological economics paradigm based on pursuing the goal of happiness and well-being rather than simply conventional GDP growth. So there was a meeting at the UN back on April 2nd where they brought together over 700 different individuals from academia and government and NGOs, et cetera, on this topic of developing a new economic paradigm. I'll be chairing a working group that will develop a report back to the UN General Assembly in 2014 on that topic. As part of the input to that project, we wrote a report for the UN on this topic of building a sustainable and desirable economy in society, in nature. And I think that the title sort of summarizes the approach that we're taking, recognizing that the economy is embedded in society, which is embedded in nature. We can't understand the economy really without understanding the whole system. And so a lot of my research has been along these lines. How do we transcend disciplinary boundaries? How do we bring together what we know about all of the different parts of the system? How do we do a better job of synthesis and not just analysis? And I think that's one fundamental direction that I think we need to go more into, is to get the balance right between the analysis of problems, breaking things down into their component parts and understanding how they work, and synthesis, putting those parts back together and trying to understand the way the whole system works. Because I don't think we'll ever solve the complex problems that we're facing. We'll never get to this goal of building a more sustainable and desirable future unless we take this broader systems approach and put at least as much effort into synthesis as we do into analysis. So getting those two sides of the scientific coin really better in balance is another thing that I'm trying to do. That's sometimes difficult in academic settings where everything is arranged, around disciplines that are focused on analysis. But I think that's a direction that higher education needs to go and hopefully is going. Not that it's an either-or kind of thing, but again, it's a process of getting the balance right. In addition, I think we need to get the message out to a much broader audience than simply what the readers of academic journals, as important as those are. And I've been involved in the creation of several academic journals. The first one back in 1989 was Ecological Economics, and this was an attempt to, again, integrate across the natural and the social sciences to build this transdisciplinary understanding of how the system works. More recently, I've been involved in the creation of this journal, Ecosystem Services, devoted specifically to that topic of the contributions of natural capital to human well-being. And also to the creation of a new society called the Ecosystem Services Partnership. And this is a society that goes beyond academia to also include practitioners, policymakers, et cetera, in everyone who's working on studying and applying this idea of ecosystem services to better manage our natural capital assets and to build this sustainable future. But as I said, we need to go further, I think, than just that and get to a, there it is. Get to some real solutions to these problems. And that's going to take communication not just around academia or within academia, but with the entire policy community, with the public at large. So Solutions is a hybrid academic and popular journal. It's on the web. It's also in print. And one of our rules of thumb is that no more than a third of the papers can be about describing the problem. 2/3 has to be about describing the solutions. Having that discussion about what real solutions might look like, how do we build consensus around those solutions, I think that's one of the things we're trying to do with this publication. And this will also be housed here at the Crawford School.